Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Natalia Mulebadzi. I am from the Unisa Library. We have 13 branches across the country and a branch in Ethiopia, in Akaki, and we really invite you to explore our library, to explore our services, and I'll tell you a little bit more as we go along. But today we have the pleasure of having such a prolific part of this country, of this country's history, of this country's struggle. And before I even mention the kind of things that she has done, it is an honor to, on the eve of World Book and Copyright Day, to have Ms. Zubeida Jaffer join us. I think this is so apt to celebrate UNESCO's World Book and Copyright Day. And we'll speak a little bit more about how books and copyright come together, and just, throw in one little question there about that. An award-winning journalist, an author, an activist, not just in South Africa, but really all over the world. Who started her career at the Cape Times in 1980 and also spent a short stint at the Rand Daily Mail in Johannesburg in the same year. Her work has earned her numerous local and international awards. These include the Muslim Views Achiever Award, as well as the Honor Medal for Distinguished Service to Journalism from the University of Missouri in the USA. She helped with developing local communities newspapers such as Grassroots during the time of resistance to apartheid. Her stories have appeared in newspapers across South Africa and more broadly in countries such as Japan, India, the UK, and North America, among others. She was the founding editor of independent newspapers, Parliamentary Bureau servicing 14 newspapers across South Africa. She is also the first woman in Africa to have won the coveted Foreign Journalist Award from the National Association of Black Journalists in the USA. Her memoir, Our Generation, eloquently tells the story of her emotional journey through the years of South Africa's turbulence into a new democracy. Her second book, Love in the Time of Treason, has been described as a tour de force. And so much more information if you look at zubeidajaffer.co.za for information on the places she's been at, the things that she's done, and her books as well. If I sit here and read your bio, it's going to take us a very long time to finish and just read some of the things that people have said about you. I want to first just ask you, how are you? How have you been in this time? Welcome to Unisa Library. How have you been?
I'm very well, Natalia. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
You're in the,
We
you're in the
keep
middle of
well.
strike. You're in the middle of a strike.
No, we don't even, we are here, and books keep us going. People like you keep us going. So yeah, don't even. We
Carry
are
on, dear.
here. Colleagues are
Yeah.
here. Welcome everyone. readers, lovers of your work are here to hold the space. So, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I really want to go into you as a writer. I mean, I know that I've asked you to read a little bit for us, but you've been writing for such a long time, and I wonder what is your process. You know, when you write a journalistic piece, when you write a spiritual piece, when you write a whole book, what is your process like? And does this process change from one form to the next, or how do you take us through that?
That's been quite a journey, Natalia. But let me try and see if I can, kind of describe it shortly. I would describe my first training as a reporter, and that was, learning to write under conditions of deadline, learning to write fast, and learning to capture the salient points, to make sure that the public who were not present at the whatever event I'm describing, or whatever issue, that the public gets to experience the same thing that I've experienced. So that was the first very basic writing skill that I needed. And then as time went on, when change came in 1990, I was very interested in deepening my skills. I felt at that stage that I was already a journalist. I distinguished between a reporter and a journalist, but I wanted to deepen my journalism ability, and I wanted to become, I wanted to write books. And so I have this belief that when you want to do this, you can teach yourself anything, but you need a teacher. And so I looked around for a teacher, and then I was fortunate that I interviewed at the time in 1990, 91, 1990 probably, Albie Sachs. And after interviewing him, I asked him, when I came back to see him, I said to him, could I, could I show you some of my writing, because I want to take my writing onto a higher level. I knew my writing was good. I had done some good work, but I said I wanted to take it onto a higher level. So, and I wanted him to critique a few pieces. I gave him a few of the pieces and said he can be as harsh as he needs to be, and tell me what he thinks of my writing. When I saw him again, he said to me, "Look, he's looked at the writing, and he didn't critique it. He said to me, what he'd like to do is to offer me a part-time job as his research assistant, and in the process he could offer me this job for 4 months, and in the process he would critique my writing." And that's what happened. So for 4 months, I had the good fortune of working closely with him. It was part-time, but I kind of worked. I didn't have a full-time job because that time I couldn't get a job in Cape Town because of my history, of my struggle history. So I couldn't get a job. So I was freelancing generally from 1990. And so I had that good fortune to work closely with him. And so that was that was the second dimension. And then finally, um, he asked me to write a text, which we need for one of the projects that they were doing for the negotiations. And after he read the text, he said to me, "Why don't you write a book about your story?" And I never thought of that. I kind of always was hesitant about focusing on myself. But he really taught me that I had to get out of that, that I have to express, and I have to tell the stories as I saw it. And then I decided start writing my first book. But after I wrote for a while, I got really sick because it was too difficult. I started getting nightmares. Because I had to go back to those scenes where I was tortured and back to the scenes, and I just couldn't and work freelance and see into my little daughter. And I'll never forget what he said to me. I rushed to the airport because he was leaving, and I said, you know, I know you said I must do this, but I just cannot. I cannot because I must earn, and if I'm going to get sick, then I can't earn. And he said something very beautiful. He said to me, "Don't worry, just leave it, and the time will come when you can do it." And so that time came 10 years later, after I'd been carried out of independent newspapers and collapsed for a year and been sick because of the kind of behavior that I was subjected to there, from a very small group of white men. And because I was the first woman there to hold a senior position in 1997, and under at the time of the Mandela government, and my job was to um, to reorganize the parliamentary uh, bureau, etc., and make it diverse. So I took the brunt of insults, and not understanding that, I kind of just endured, and then the result was that I completely collapsed. But, but that led to my being, as I healed, as I improved, that led me to writing my first book, Our Generation. And so since then, I haven't looked back because it's different kinds of processes in each. I can tell you much more about the writing process as well, but there's different kinds of writing processes, and I'm very blessed to have learned all this, through these years, more than 40 years.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for that. And I had the pleasure of reading your work, and what you're describing really with your memoir. Um, I when one reads your work, there is a sense of there's a deep sense of taking one back to almost like they are walking that street with you. And I'm glad that you are mentioning some of the difficulties as well, because as readers and as writers, we sometimes don't understand when we're getting into the work itself how difficult, in addition to it being fun and informative, but also the toll that it takes um, on your body, on your mind, right? And you are such a deep history um, a deep history teller. So for that, I want to applaud you. But you were talking starting to get into more of the process, and I do want to ask you to get into the. I mean, I'm looking at your books, and um, I'm looking in particular at your work on, for example, the the book you write on Charlotte Matleke, Beauty of the Heart, the life and times of Charlotte Matleke, when it seemed like Charlotte Matleke was not fashionable. You write this book. I mean, when you look now, you can see there's more work coming out on Charlotte Matleke, but you were like the first person to do this work. Um, Tell me about that. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm not the first person. The first person who really started digging was Dr. Tozama April. She did a PhD thesis, but I'm the first person to have kind of put it into a readable form, and for so that people can kind of access it. So I accept that that first.
Please do.
But
You have to accept um,
yes,
the
yes,
accolades that are there. I really appreciate you mentioning the scholarly work as well, which is also a different type of work, but that also helps writers when we do research. But I so appreciate the work that can go beyond the academic realm,
yes,
work that can reach both the academic and
yes.
the non-academic. So yeah, tell us about that.
People say to me often, or now they talk to me, then they say, "Oh, you write, your books are about women, and they're about women's biographies, and chosen to do that." And then I'm so puzzled because it didn't really happen like that. It has ended up like that. I mean, I've written 3 books that are about women's stories, but I didn't decide I'm going to write women's stories and let me look for stories about women. No, it didn't work like that. It's just that the stories came. The stories came to me, really did. And the our generation, of course, was my story. But Love in the Time of Treason, I think I sat with that story for 26 years before I wrote it, because as a young, I was about 23, 22, when I visited Worcester and not discovered, but got to interview this family and got to know about Aisha Dawood. So there I sat with the story, and I knew that the story has to be written. But of course, that was 1982, 81, 82. Yeah, about 82, I think. And that wasn't a priority at that point. We were in the middle of, the most intense period of struggle against apartheid. And so that wasn't a priority, but it was always there for me. So when I finished I did a smaller book after 1990 on her, and but then I knew I wanted to transform it into a bigger book, and so that's how that came about. And then the third, the Charlotte Maxeke book, also was completely accidental. I was walking on the campus of the University of the Free State when I arrived there as a writer in residence. And Professor Jansen, I mean, I didn't know him. He just called me and he said, we spoke, and then we spoke subsequently, and then eventually he came down and he said to me, could we offer you this position of writing residence for 5 years? It was completely out of, so such a surprise. And so I did. I went, and we were walking on the campus, and there was a poster of a Charlotte Maxeke memorial lecture. This was probably 2013. And then I started speaking to him about it, and I said, I know nothing about this woman, and if you know very little, we're hearing her name, but we never knew her name in the 70s and 80s. We didn't know her name at all. I mean, she was never mentioned. There's Lily and Goy, Ellen Joseph, those women, but never, ever did I hear its name. Then he sent me to an office that was part of organizing the lecture, and said I should find out what information there is. Got back and said to him, but there's very little information, seems like they have very little information. And then he just turned to me and he said, so don't you want to do the research and write a story? And what was so extraordinary was that I said yes immediately. Now, I've been approached by many people to write these stories. I mean, I'm constantly approached by people to write these stories. And I always say no, because I always say no. And then, I'll say I'll think about it, whatever, but I always say no. And in the end, I think about it, but then I say no, because when you write somebody's story, you live with them, for that time. I lived with Charlotte for 3 years, and I mean maybe longer, and it's never out of your head, and it's a terribly, I mean, it's a wonderful experience, but it's also a very tough experience because you're trying to find out about this person and you don't know. So you have to be absorbed in it, and you have to become fully absorbed. And so the Charlotte book was the hardest of the three books because there was nobody alive that I could interview. I only found one person who was 106 years old, and I won't tell you what she said, but it's in the book. Gogo Siete, she's up in the north. And but other than that, there was nobody alive that I could interview. So I found this one of the hardest books to write. But one of the most rewarding. I mean, last year was so amazing that the whole year became Charlotte Matleke year. I wouldn't have imagined that. So it's been wondrous, yes, really wondrous. Not easy, but wondrous too.
And I really appreciate how you say that this woman was not in, public, the public eye in a sense, or public memory as much as the other women were. And that seemed to be an inspiration for you, something that nags. And it's writing like that, really, that for me becomes so integral to this womanist writing, right? Where you want to lift the voices of those um, who whose voices have been subjugated. And in your case, you do it so innately, so wholly, in a sense that you feel that you have to write, you have to shine this woman's voice without those without that rationale that says, oh, I'm writing a feminist story, or I'm writing a a story of a woman that people don't know, but you just looked at this woman and said, but this person is such an integral part of our history, of our struggle. And that for me is the real contribution, where you just, I see your work as just putting this puzzle together. And also as a journalist, and I wanted to speak a little bit about you as a journalist then, now. How has journalism, the trajectory of journalism in the country and globally? I mean, now we have this kind of churning out of news everywhere, where you don't know sometimes the integrity of the story. And especially for you, and those who started writing much earlier. How's that going? How's that going? Do you look at
I think
a story and think, okay, I don't know about intellectual property rights here. I don't know about the copyright. I don't know about the the truth, or what? Yeah, tell us about that.
I think we're in the middle of an information war, and I find it very difficult to establish what is truth and what is not truth. And so I tend to, you tend to go to people that you think you trust. So what in the end shows the most important thing about journalism is trust, building trust with the public. That's the most important thing. And so, if you don't develop that trust and you're not somebody who is seen to be trustworthy, then, and you chop and change, then then why should I listen to you? And so, but at the moment, it's a particularly difficult time. It's a very difficult time, and we've got to think of how do we, what do we do in the situation? You have the banning of the Russian television. You have, sort of, yeah, and Russia in turn banning news outlets, and then Ukraine banning news outlets. And I think a blogger in Ukraine has just been sentenced to 15 years for opposing the war. And, you have all this going on. And the question is going to be for us as questions be for us as journalists, I feel, that we must make up our minds whether we remain committed to the principles of free speech that been told for so long is important, and which we are fully committed to in this country, or do we just chop and change as time comes along? Feel like this, then we feel like that. We feel like banning that newspaper, we feel like banning that um, um, outlet, then we do that. Now, we haven't banned anything because the Russian TV wasn't banned by us. It was taken off multi-choice by the Europeans. But over 300,000, I'm not quite sure the number, but a large European journalist organization has opposed this. They haven't been able to reverse it, but they've opposed this and said that it's not for the European Union to decide to close news outlets. So we're in the middle of that, and I'm really, really sorry. I'm really, really sad because and concerned because I feel that journalism and the kind of the value of journalism and the status of journalism is hugely being compromised. And so we're going to have to really look and think in this country as well, whether we're committed to putting all sides of the story and whether we're committed to questioning the stories that come across on the news wires, and whether we're looking at more than once and being careful at this time to present all sides of the story.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And that brings that issue of integrity and free speech, which is the kind of work that you have been committed to all your life, And I just wanted to, before I open, for questions and ask you to read a little snippet, there's a question that's nagging a little bit. UNESCO says World Book Day, but then says, wait a minute, World Book and Copyright Day. As a writer and a reader and somebody who's so committed to the process of writing, to the truth of writing, why do you think that, how does copyright and books go hand in hand? Like, what does that tell us?
Mm. Natalia, a lot of us as creatives, we have, and we know this in the music industry and other, but let's talk about writers. We don't have control, or we do suppose to have copyright, but we really don't have control over our creative work, because I know of writers, it's happened to me as well, but it's a long story. But our work is on Amazon, but we don't even know, and
Mm.
books are sold and we don't even know. And so that is a very big area that needs to be looked at. But what I felt a year ago in March, actually a year before that, as COVID started, it was my daughter, who was a teacher, who kind of, shook me and said to me, "Mommy, what's going to happen when you die? Where's all your work, or what's happening?" And that led to us deciding on creating a business vehicle, number 10 publishers, and taking my books back from the other publishers and relaunching it under number 10 publishers, setting up a shop. I mean, we redesigned we redesigned everything. We set up our own online shop, which I hope all of you will support. And we started a different process where I said, okay, if I die, Rushka, then you know where all this is, it's in one place. And so it's more than copyright, it's ownership of our creative output. And I'm very fortunate. I mean, I could do it because of my vast experience and how far I've come. But not everybody can do that. But what I hope to do is to learn through this, and maybe by next year or the following year, we hope to provide a service to other writers and say, look, if you want to do this on your own, this is how you can do it. This is what you can do. And if we publish, help people publish or whatever under number 10, this is our thinking. We don't know what's going to happen because we're going slow. Then we're not going to take the copyright of that person. We don't want to do that. We're going to leave the copyright with the writer, and we are going to help them through the process because we've already learned. And then we also would like to benefit from that, obviously. We need to be paid, but we're not going to take charge of the copyright. Because many of us, when we sign contracts with the publishers, um, if I didn't get some help from somebody, I wouldn't have known that it's better to remove the clauses about films rights and radio rights, and so you just sign that thing and then you sign away all your copyright. And so yes, UNESCO is right to have Book Day and Copyright Day, because we have to start understanding what this means. And I'm very pleased, we now a year old, and we have really started clicking about how all this works. And it's not rocket science, but it's always been in the hands of established publishers, and then we just go along we just go along. But the benefit of it is not coming to us so that we can help others. The benefit is going to the old companies that have always just been there.
Yeah.
So I think that the copyright issue is very important. The ownership of our creative process is very important. We may not know we didn't know how it was all going to work, but we've learned, you know. And I'm very thankful that my daughter, we are co-partners of the company, and because she's got so much more energy than me, she really kind of has been able to run around. But we've been able to really begin to understand this process and what to do, and we're learning more. But it does depend on the support from all of you, that you buy directly from us, buy the books directly from us from the online shop. And people
I
are
go ahead, please.
no, they are buying the books online, so that's
So we will also be supporting you, uh, because you're coming at a very important point of the how do we put our creative energy, our creative outputs in spaces that we're able to control, or at least some of them. I mean, I know that some of your work has been published overseas. How's that going? Are you able to monitor some of the work that's overseas?
No, I think I would like to warn everybody that when you get that call, if you're a writer and you get that call from some overseas publisher offering to publish your books, please don't do it. Please don't do it, because it's just a money-making scheme. And my experience, it's not been a completely bad experience. I republished Love in the Time of Treason as On Trial with Mandela, and
Mm.
it was beautifully done. but I paid for it essentially, and they did very little to really. They expect you to do all the work, and then they get the income. So it's not a good idea. I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. It's almost a vanity sort of issue where you think, oh, I got this call from an international publisher. They want to publish my books, and so you think you're very pleased with yourself and charmed and whatever. But it's really not. It's just about you paying them, a certain amount of money and them doing the book. But you have to do all the work. So I would really warn against that. So it's been a mixed experience, but I would not advise anybody to do it.
Yeah, paying with your brain fruits, all
Yeah,
your
yeah,
creative
yeah,
outputs when yeah.
yeah,
And I love how, this venture is also an intergenerational venture where you bringing your wisdom, and Rushka is bringing her energy, so I wish you well on that, and we will put the information out as well. I know, and I'm not going to go into this, but I know that there is also a new book that has come out of Unisa Press. Yes, decolonizing journalism education, such an integral part of how scholars can teach journalism in schools of communication. So that contribution is so immense. I know that you have three co-editors in the book, Professors Ilva Rodney Gumede, Professor Colin Chassi, and Vuso Bonono. I don't want to go into it, but I'm tempted to just say a little bit. Just say a little bit. How did this book get to Unisa Press? And I don't want to go into spoilers because we're going to have a fuller event with all of you editors in the very near future. But if you can just hint, and then I'll go and open up for questions.
yeah. I think, Talia, I'm going to limit that because, as you said, in the next few weeks we'll launch the book, and we will have this conversation with you and with the other editors present, and but. The title speaks for itself, decolonizing journalism education, and to challenge academics to think about what they teach. And so I think we'll leave that. I'm very, very interested to see if there are questions. I still have possibility of doing a reading if we want
Oh
to, but I'm
yes,
more interested if there are questions, and I'm very happy to answer any of
please
that.
do. I really would like to encourage anyone who has questions um, to you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, and Brian, if you can see in the chat if we have any questions. But yes, questions and comments are welcome. We are speaking here with a prolific cultural producer to have ever come out of our country. And it really is a privilege to be sitting here and listening to you speak in your own words and put your experiences in your own words. That means a lot to us. And it also means a lot to us as an institution to have you now contributing your knowledge to the academic realm in this space. So does anybody have a question or a comment? This moment doesn't come every day, people. Okay. If you do not have questions, I'm going to ask you to just read a passage briefly for us. We want to hear you read in your voice so that we can take that all in.
I think I'm going to read from Charlotte. I've also got a piece from our generation, but let me start with Charlotte. Beauty of the Heart. Beauty of the Heart, in fact, the words are words that Charlotte herself used. She emphasized why it's very important to have beauty of the heart. She defined that as good conduct. It's so interesting because at the moment we're seeing such bad conduct. I mean, such bad conduct in our country and in the world. But let's talk about our country. Bad conduct. And it's so puzzling. I just look at it and I think, how can we behave? I mean, how can a sliver of our society that's in the leadership behave so badly? I mean, it's almost, I can't understand it. But anyway, this is what she says. I'm going to read, and I'm reading at the end of the book. Um, Over the years, her voice, her words, and her actions resounded across the length and breadth of the country. She was not the only woman leader, but she easily was the most formidable of her time. Her death had robbed the National Council of African Women of one of its founder members. After her death, Ms. T.M. Soga took over as president of the council until the third annual conference. The third annual conference of the National Council of African Women was held at the Bantu Bata Hall in Bloemfontein on 14th to 16th December 1939. On this occasion, Ms. Soga paid tribute to the late president of the council. I'm not going to read that statement. I'm going to carry on. There were some in that hall who may still have recalled Charlotte's remarks at the same venue a year earlier. Perhaps those words still hung lightly, like balloons from the wooden beams, holding up the corrugated iron roof. And this is what she said. I want to thank you very much and congratulate you for your excellent deliberations. This means progress in our midst, and it's due to the fact that we have a band of enlightened young people. This work is not for yourselves. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above your people, but live with them. If you can rise, bring someone with you. She continued, circulate your work and distribute as much information as possible, because this is not your council, but the Council of African Women from here right up to Egypt. Do away with the fearful animal jealousy. Kill that spirit and love one another as brothers and sisters. The other animal that will tear us to pieces is tribalism. I saw the shadow of it, and it should cease to be. Finally, she had urged the women to stand by the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have they should do unto you. And that's how I end the book. It's just, I mean, her words all these years later, we're sitting with these problems. And it needs a body of enlightened young people. We need now desperately a body of enlightened young people who will you take charge and move the country forward. We cannot give up at this crucial point. After all this effort that's been made, we see all the nonsense, we see all the degradation, we see all the foolishness, but we need to keep on track and say that we need to focus on hope. We need to to encourage hope, and we need that young energy. We need that young energy, and I have no doubt if people can step forward, and we have young energy, who believe, who want to see the country succeed, then we can solve these problems, because all these problems are fixable. They are fixable. They're not problems that can't be, fixed. In KZN now, Gift of the Givers is coming in. They've got the expertise. Why doesn't the government have the expertise? So it's a matter of making sure the government has the expertise as well, sorting out the mess in disaster management. It's all things that can be solved. But if we have the attitude that, oh, this is the most terrible thing on earth, and oh, we are bad lot, we all bad, and we cannot, that's not the way to go. We've got to say, we can do this. We've got to be as positive as we can. We've got to speak out about the nonsense, but we mustn't be living in that nonsense. We must live in hope, and I've already decided I'm not getting involved in that. All that. There's enough people trying to, that's, talking about how bad things are and all that. I'm not involved with that. I'm only busy with trying to see how we can, spread words of hope and inspire and get things going. I'm not saying I'm doing that. I'm just saying that I align myself with whoever is doing that. Because when we speak negatively and when we say negative things, then we enlarge those things. And if we show people that, look at what Charlotte went through, look at what Aisha Dawood went through, look at how so many people went through. They were young, but they stayed the course. And so we are in a better position. But now we again having a challenge. And so we must stay the course, and we must get up and, get things done. Our subways are dirty here, so there are people trying to sort out this, take each problem and solve it, and fix it. But it's disgraceful. I mean, we're in a disgraceful situation, but it's not fixable. We must remember that, and we must keep on saying that we can fix this, and we are not don't want to be associated with this disgraceful, terrible behavior that's rubbishing everything that people have done for decades, a century really, more than a
People like
century.
you, people like you. I often think of people who were at the forefront of the struggle, and I wonder that you put the kind of country that you wanted to see, that you wanted to live in. You were in that space and made that contribution. And what happens when things go wrong? And and you're sitting and telling us about being solution focused and fixing things when they go wrong. It's what I'm hearing is that you are having the spirit that you had then, to say, well, things are wrong, we're going to fix them. And you are still sitting with that spirit, in addition to having created points of reference, points of reference such as beauty of the heart. So I really like how, and I'm inspired by how that commitment. Is it not easy um, to lose the hope, though, when you've worked so hard and you've put your life's work, and when things go wrong, how do you, or rather, the question should be, how do you keep the hope? What are some of the things that make you keep the hope then and now?
Well, what keeps my hope is you, Natalia, and others like you, because and I'm very fortunate that I deal with a lot of young people all the time. Either mentor them or whatever I do. But I deal with a lot of young people because I believe that those of us who are older must transfer our skills. And but it's not only that. What it does, it inspires me because I see all the amazing things. I mean, what you're doing, you wouldn't have 40 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do the job that you're doing now, right? UNISA was a white organization. You would have been the domestic. You would have been the domestic there, sweeping the floors. Now you are doing this. So when I see you, then it makes me very happy, you know? And so I kind of see, I I know we can, everything can collapse. I know that. I'm not stupid, I'm not ignorant. But I also know that in history, that is how it goes. I mean, if you religious, think of what happened the time with Jesus, and I mean, they even killed Jesus, and then chaos happened. If I read up in the Quran, and I see what happened post when the Prophet Muhammad, after he died, oh, chaos, chaos, and historically you go through. I mean, it's almost natural that you go through these cycles and you've got to renew. And so I mean, I'm horrified. I mean, I'm horrified. Was, I mean, the biggest knife in my back, I thought, was when it was announced that Zwelim Kize had, gotten involved in digital vibes and whatever he'd done. I mean, I just felt I almost couldn't recover after that. But but I would like to see him saying, I accept that I may not have done something right, and I'd like to step aside and, just help at another level, but not take any public role. But he's not doing that. So, I'm just singling him out because I really, really admired him. And and I know him, I've met him, and I know his daughter, and so I'm very sad about it for the family. But if you behave like this, it's just he's going to get hit again, because I believe if you keep on doing things that are wrong, then you end up getting experiences that knock you. You know, I just believe in that. So I'm very excited, Natalia, to see you
I'm
and
excited to see you and to be in the space with you. And I want to share two things. Um, I don't see any questions, but my colleague Muhadi says this is such an honor for us to have heard about such an immense work from this remarkable woman, writer and journalist. It is very inspiring to learn more about this entrepreneur person, and keep up the good work. And Suren says, a very informative and thought-provoking conversation. I'll be sure to get a copy of your book. And then Marita says, very informative and a positive discussion. And I hope that my colleagues know that this is not the first and the last time. Can you be one of our staples that we have, for various occasions, because I think we need the kind of style that you have in terms of your intellectual work, your cultural work, but also your personal energy in how you approach life. I think those are very important things. We often put just brain to the work. But as you were reading from Charlotte Maxake's messages, that actually you put the heart, that too is an intellectual energy, that is an intellectual space that we often don't go to. So I am really, really inspired at this moment. And I want to encourage and invite everyone who's here and everyone who's not here, because this conversation is recorded, and we're going to put it on our different platforms. And I want to say that please go to Zubeida Jaffer .co.za. It's Zubeida and her last name Jaffer. There's no way that you cannot find her on Google. There's no way. I mean, if I have to spell the last name Jaffer, but there's no way that you cannot find her. You can find her speeches, you can find her interviews, and also in the website you'll see number 10 publishers. And also there's a part that says books. You can get the books there. And I know that we have copies of your books in the Unisa Library. And I'm encouraging everyone to read your books, buy your books as gifts. Oh, I like that. I like that. Hold that. You know, we'll be taking pictures as we go along. Yes. Okay, there she is, holding her own books, and I love the covers. By the way, that they are so just beautifully done, and I want to congratulate you on that. The other thing that I want to close with, I want to ask you if you have any more. I mean, you've said so many inspirational things in this discussion. I I had a question where I wanted to say any last words of encouragement to anyone who is a writer, who's a journalist, and you've said so much, but I can give you the last word at this point.
Well, if everybody, all of us in the country, if we just decide every year to learn one new skill, then the whole country will move up. So I a few years ago realized with the internet today, you can just about learn anything that you want to learn without having to pay for it. So a few years ago, one of the things I decided to learn, every year I've decided to learn an extra additional skill. But the one year, about 3, 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to learn to draw. Now, at school, I always believed I couldn't draw. I was always that's in my head. So, and now as I've got, I'm in my 60s, I realized there's nothing like you can't do something. You can actually do anything if you practice. And so I called a friend of mine who's she's a doctor, but she's also an artist. And I said, and she was at school with me, and I said, Carol, I want to learn to draw. Can you show me some? Can we get together and can you show me some basics? And she did. Showed me how to draw a cup and a saucer, and how the proportions and all that, the jug and whatever. And then I started drawing and I started practicing. And now I can sit and I can draw, I can draw because I'm not scared I'm not telling myself I can't draw, you see. And so my point is that you can teach yourself. If you're saying, I'm not a good writer, let's say you say you're not a good writer. Firstly, you mustn't say you're not a good writer. I'm a good writer, but I want to be a better writer. And then what is it that you don't know? And all the things that you don't know, you can ask. You can ask me, you can ask other writers. I didn't say half the things that I could say, that I could explain to you on this webinar about writing. So, so it's all there, the knowledge is there, but everybody's saying, oh, I don't have money to go to university, I can't do that course, or, oh, I can't do, it's always a negative. I can't do this, or I can't do that, or this is the problem. But in fact, you can learn anything because we have such a rich country in terms of the people that we have around
The
us.
people that we have around. We tend to think institutions are buildings, but people
No,
are,
the
are
people.
also institutions.
Choose a person. Choose a person if you want to learn something. Choose a person who's doing that really well. Like choose a person who speaks very well. I'm just saying. How does it? I mean, I kind of watch sometimes. I watch Oprah Winfrey. I watch others, and I see. Look at the techniques they use, and and when I mean, many years ago, as a young person, I was too scared to. When I was at school, I was too scared to get up and ask a question, even when I was at varsity. And my father was very strong influence in my life. He said to me, just look at one person in the audience. Just look at one person, and then you speak, and just keep on trying. And I tried. I started with like asking one question, and nearly died, and stuff like that. But you know, it's practice. It's all it
Yeah.
is practice.
Yeah.
And
I really appreciate that. I really
it's all
appreciate that. Yeah. The
practice.
practice
You know?
and that moment of saying I can, and knowing that there are institutions living, libraries living in people's bodies,
Yes,
so thank you for being that library, and I hope that those who are not here now can be able to access this recording on our Facebook page, Unisa Library. We will put the link also on our Twitter page, Unisa Library. And if you have not followed the Unisa Library page, do so, because we will be sharing snippets of this conversation and many other things, hundreds and thousands of e-resources that we have for our students. We don't just have books in paper form, but we have all sorts of digital resources that we share with our students. So definitely there is no I can't attitude. I want to at this time thank you for your time. I know we're going a little bit over, but I could sit here all day and just talk to you. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your integrity, for your generosity, for your wisdom, for your courage, for all the commitment, the life commitment that you've put into this country. May you continue to be lifted, and may you continue to do the uh, work, the activism work, be it community, journalism, scholarly. I want to see more of the kind of teachings that we can learn from you. So I'm going to ask and follow your steps. You're a democratic person, free speech. Everybody must have their rights. So anyone who wishes to put on their camera so that we can take a picture with Miss Zubeida, you're welcome. Just so that we can all say we were here, even if it's in a virtual space. So you're welcome. If people don't feel like they want to take a picture, yeah, that's Brian. Yeah, that's Soraya. And Soraya also had a message for us saying, such an inspirational and empowering speaker. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just have a take a picture with all of us, and yes, just people who have supported this moment. It is so much appreciated, so much appreciated. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Remember to engage with us on our social media pages, and remember to also engage with us on our sites, Unisa Library, unisa.ac.za/library. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and we'll see you again. Bye.